I never wanted anyone to know who I really was. Every morning, I'd pull on my oversized hoodie, shove my sketchbook into my bag, and slip out the back door of my apartment, blending into the crowd like a ghost. Aurelia City was big enough for people to ignore me, which suited me just fine. They all thought I was a broke art student. I was supposed to be struggling, surviving on instant noodles and second-hand clothes. And that was perfect. My secret. I was the only daughter of Jonathan Carrington, the man whose business empire stretched across 5 continents. But nobody could ever know. Not yet. Of course, secrets have a way of sticking to you, like wet ink on a page. And I had just enough bad luck to know exactly how sticky they could be. This morning, I was sitting at the tiny cafe down the street, sketching a scene from the skyline when I heard it, laughter I knew too well. Ella Carrington? I froze. My sketchbook slipped from my lap. The name hit me like a jolt of electricity. It was Ryan, my ex. The one who had promised he cared about me but only ever cared about what I could offer. And judging by the way he grinned, he was up to something. Ryan, I said, trying to sound casual, though my heart was thundering. What are you doing here? Oh, just thought I'd see how my favorite broke neighbor was doing, he said, leaning over the table. Still drawing pretty pictures instead of living in the real world? I clenched my fists under the table, forcing a polite smile. Yes, I like my world. He snorted. Cute. Still, I'm sure people would be really interested to know who you really are. I mean, your dad, he's kind of a big deal, right? My stomach dropped. Big deal. He knew. Or was he bluffing? I didn't get a chance to answer because the cafe door swung open, and I felt a sudden chill. A tall man stepped inside, suit crisp, hair perfect, eyes scanning the room with the kind of precision that made you feel like every secret you had was on display. Adrian. The CEO of Carrington Global's rival company. The man everyone whispered about but nobody ever got close to. And now he was staring right at me. Ryan didn't notice him. He was too busy scrolling on his phone, probably tweeting about how he was about to expose Ella Carrington, the heiress next door. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear into the shadows where he couldn't reach me. But Adrian's gaze stopped me in my tracks. There was no warmth, no judgment, just recognition. Ella Carrington, he said, his voice low and controlled. We need to talk. I felt every eye in the cafe turn toward us. Ryan's smug grin faltered. Talk? I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. Now. Adrian's eyes didn't leave mine. Yes. Now. And just like that, the world I had carefully hidden behind hoodies and sketches was gone. Every secret I had held close was about to explode. Ryan's phone slipped from his hand. His plan had just backfired in a way he could never have imagined. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the table. The girl who lived next door, invisible and untouchable, had just been thrust into a world she wasn't ready for. And standing across from me was the man who might ruin me or save me. I didn't know which yet. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, I woke up to a storm, my phone blowing up with notifications, the red dots multiplying like wildfire. At first, I thought it was just another boring group chat, until I saw the headlines. Aurelia's hidden heiress exposed, Ella Carrington. My stomach turned over. No. No. I dropped my phone onto the bed, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my ribs. My secret, the one thing I had clung to, my carefully constructed invisible life, was gone. Every cafe barista who knew my order, every neighbor who waved at me in passing, every person who smiled politely without knowing me, now they all knew. I was rich. I was famous. I was public property. And of course, Ryan was there at the center of it all. The man who had tried to humiliate me had gone one step further. He had uploaded a video, calling me the poor girl who fooled everyone, and tagged the world. His smug grin from yesterday was replaced by an online frenzy that he clearly hadn't anticipated because everyone's attention was on me, not him. I wanted to crawl under the covers and disappear forever. But I couldn't. Not now. I heard a knock at the door. My mother's assistant, Claire, stepped in, perfectly composed as always, but her expression was tight. Ella. Adrian's here. I froze. Of all people, why now? Why Adrian? He was standing in the hallway when I opened the door, tall and impossibly still, his eyes unreadable as ever. There was no warmth in his face, no sympathy. Just focus. Ella, he said, stepping inside. We need to leave. Now. Leave? Where? I asked, clutching the edge of my hoodie like it was a lifeline. My life, everything, just blew up. I know, he said quietly, but there was steel under his calm. And you're not safe here. Not with Ryan posting online, not with the press circling, and not with your father's enemies watching every move. He spoke like someone who had been expecting this moment for a long time. Someone who already had a plan. And yet, I didn't know if he was my ally, or a new kind of threat. I hesitated. Why are you helping me? Adrian's gaze didn't falter. Because I don't like chaos. And you are not ready for it. Trust me, Ella, this isn't a game. I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of just how exposed I was. My sketches, my hoodies, my little apartment, they all felt like lies now. And for the first time, I realized that being rich was not just a secret, it was a weapon. And everyone, even the people I thought I could trust, would try to use it against me. The cafe incident, Ryan's betrayal, the viral video, it was just the beginning. I nodded slowly, more to convince myself than Adrian. Okay, what do we do? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he held out his hand. Calm, commanding, and utterly unnerving. Come with me. I'll explain everything on the way. And Ella, his eyes softened just slightly, but not enough to be comforting. You need to prepare yourself. This world you've been hiding from, it's far bigger and far darker than you think. I hesitated for a fraction of a second. And then, with a deep breath, I took his hand. As soon as I did, the phone buzzed again. Another headline. Another comment thread. Another swarm of people demanding to see the heiress next door. But this time, I wasn't running alone. And that thought, strange as it was, made the storm outside feel just a little less terrifying. The car ride was silent at first. I sat in the backseat, clutching my bag like a shield, while Adrian drove with the kind of precision that made me nervous. His hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes focused straight ahead, but I could feel the weight behind them as if he carried the knowledge of every secret in Aurelia City. Where are we going? I finally asked, my voice small. To a safe house, he replied without looking at me. Your father's enemies will exploit every leak, every rumor. They've been waiting for an opening, and right now, you're the opening. I swallowed. Enemies? Like who? He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his gaze sharp. People who would destroy you to get to your father. Business rivals. Family rivals. People who don't care that you're a person, they only care that you're the heiress. The word heiress felt strange on my tongue. My whole life, I'd tried to ignore it. Now, it wasn't something I could hide under a hoodie. It was flashing on every screen, whispered in every corner of the city. I tried to shake it off. So, what about Ryan? He just wanted attention, right? Adrian's jaw tightened. Ryan is small time, but his exposure makes him dangerous. People will see you as weak, and weak is always exploitable. I shivered. Weak. That's exactly how I felt. The car turned down a narrow alley, and soon we were pulling up to a modern building tucked away from the street. No signs. No names. Nothing to indicate that anyone lived or hid there. I stepped out, looking around nervously. The city felt different here, quieter, safer. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every shadow seemed like it had eyes. Adrian led me inside, and I was immediately struck by the stark contrast. The place was sleek and minimalist, white walls, soft lighting, and cameras subtly placed in the corners. It screamed security, efficiency, and danger. Welcome to your new reality, Adrian said. He didn't smile, but there was a hint of something unreadable in his tone. You'll stay here for now. No visitors. No social media. No distractions. I nodded, feeling trapped and exposed all at once. And you? You're just going to leave me here? He shook his head. I'll be around. You need guidance, Ella. You're about to enter a world you barely understand. Business, politics, family power, it's all connected. And your father, he's not the only one with enemies. His words sent a chill down my spine. My father was powerful, yes. But power always came with enemies. And now, I was part of that chessboard. I wandered over to the window, looking out at Aurelia City. It seemed the same, busy, bright, alive, but I knew it wasn't. Not for me anymore. Not after today. Adrian's voice cut through my thoughts. There's something else you need to know. I turned to him, heart racing. What? He paused, his eyes locking onto mine. Your mother, she didn't just disappear. Her absence was orchestrated. And people in your family have been keeping secrets about you, about us, that you're going to need to uncover if you want to survive. I felt my knees weaken. Secrets. Betrayal. Lies. Everything I thought I knew about my life was unraveling. Adrian stepped closer. I'll protect you. But I can't do everything. You'll have to make choices, Ella. Hard ones. Choices that will change your life, and maybe the people around you. I swallowed hard, gripping the edge of the desk. And you? Are you going to be on my side? His gaze softened, just slightly. I'm always on the side of the truth. And yet, as I watched him, I couldn't tell if the truth he meant was mine, or his. For the first time in my life, I realized that being rich wasn't glamorous. It was a battlefield. And I had just been thrown into the middle of it. The heiress next door wasn't invisible anymore. She was a target. And someone was already waiting in the shadows. The first night in the safe house was the longest night of my life. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning on the pristine white bed while Aurelia City's neon lights cast restless shadows through the blinds. Every notification from my phone, every whispered rumor online, felt like a tiny explosion aimed directly at me. And then there was Ryan. I hadn't expected him to strike so soon, but Adrian wasn't exaggerating, he was dangerous in his own way. By midday, my social media accounts were flooded with messages. Fans, journalists, strangers who claimed to know the truth about me. But buried beneath the noise was a pattern, Ryan. He was using every account, every platform, every mutual connection he could reach to embarrass me further. And worst of all, he wasn't subtle. I watched in horror as a new post went viral, a fabricated story about me supposedly leveraging my broke student image to cheat my way into my father's fortune. Pictures of me were taken from my old apartment, from cafes I used to frequent, combined with screenshots of my private sketches, twisted to make them seem like evidence. I felt my chest tighten. My private world, my little life, had been ripped apart. And for what? Revenge? Attention? I didn't even want him in my life anymore. Adrian walked in quietly, like he always did, his presence somehow commanding yet calm. He glanced at my phone, then at me, and let out a slow breath. Ryan isn't just an idiot chasing attention, he said, his voice low. He's testing your defenses. He's looking for weak points, something he can use to hurt your father, or you, or both. You have to be careful. I don't understand, I said, my voice trembling. Why is he doing this now? I mean, it's just me. Adrian's gaze hardened. It's never just you, Ella. He's trying to manipulate your image. And if he succeeds, he could ruin you. People underestimate small threats, but they can be the most dangerous. He's small, yes, but he's persistent, and he has no conscience. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. Persistent. No conscience. That sounded exactly like Ryan. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I can't fight him. I can barely fight myself. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. You don't have to fight alone. But you have to be smart. Ryan thrives on attention and chaos. Don't give him either. Stay hidden, stay focused, and he paused, just long enough to make my heart race. Don't let your emotions control you. Not now, not ever. I nodded slowly, trying to absorb his words. They made sense, but logic was a poor shield against the panic curling inside me. Then came the final blow of the day, a notification on my phone. My father had commented publicly on one of Ryan's posts. Ella is my daughter. Anyone trying to humiliate her will answer to me. It was meant to protect me, but instead, it drew even more attention. The city exploded with gossip, and Ryan only laughed harder. He posted a response video, mocking the tycoon's daughter and claiming that power couldn't save me from embarrassment. I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. Not because I was scared of Ryan, though I was, but because I had no idea how to navigate this new world. My secret life was gone, my reputation in tatters, and the city seemed to close in around me. Adrian's hand landed gently on my shoulder, grounding me. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You're stronger than you think. Ryan is just the beginning. And one day, when you understand the game, you'll be the one in control." I looked up at him, his expression unreadable, but there was a flicker of something beneath the cold exterior, a promise, maybe. Or a warning. "Are you saying I can fight back?" I whispered. He nodded once. "And when you do, Ryan and anyone else who tries to take advantage of you won't know what hit them." For the first time in the last 24 hours, I felt a spark of something dangerous, determination. Ryan wanted revenge. Fine. I would give it to him. But Adrian? I wasn't sure if he would be a shield or a blade. Either way, the game had begun. The safe house was quiet this morning, but the silence was deceiving. I sat at the sleek black desk, laptop open, staring at the screen with clenched fists. Ryan's latest posts were still circulating, but I'd learned something important overnight. Panic was useless. Strategy mattered. Adrian stood nearby, arms crossed, observing me like a hawk. His presence was suffocating and reassuring at the same time. "You've been reacting," he said, voice low. "You need to act. Don't wait for them to make mistakes. Make them." I swallowed, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest every time his eyes lingered on me. Strategy, yes. That I could do. Revenge wasn't something I usually considered. But now, it was survival. I opened a new document, typing out a plan. Small moves first: expose Ryan's lies, protect my public image, and gather information on who else might try to use my status against me. I felt like a general preparing for war. Adrian leaned against the wall, watching silently. "You'll need allies," he said. "People who can move without drawing attention. Not everyone in your father's circle can be trusted." I nodded. "I get it. Small steps. Quiet, careful, and precise." "Exactly." His voice was firm, but there was something in it, a challenge, maybe even an unspoken warning. "And Ella," he paused, and I looked up at him. "The first strike must be smart. Public, but controlled. You can't afford mistakes." I bit my lip. Strike first. That meant taking control. No more hiding. No more running. I picked up my phone and drafted a post, short, calm, and authoritative. Nothing flashy. Just the truth. I posted a clear statement about Ryan's fabricated stories, sharing only verified facts about my life and my work as an art student. Then I tagged a few journalists I knew would report responsibly. Within minutes, responses started flooding in, people supporting me, correcting the lies, and, most importantly, turning the attention away from Ryan. He posted again, trying to mock me, but this time, the reaction was different. People were questioning him, not me. I felt a surge of satisfaction. The first strike had landed. Adrian's gaze softened just slightly, though the intensity never left his eyes. "Good," he said quietly. "That's the start of control. But don't get comfortable. This is just the beginning." I looked at him, heart racing. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but, thank you. For believing I could do this." He shrugged, but his eyes betrayed him. "I'm not here for thanks. I'm here because I can't afford for you to fail. And Ella, failure isn't just personal in your world. It's dangerous." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. Dangerous. Everything about my life had changed overnight. The girl who lived next door, invisible and unnoticed, was gone. And in her place was someone who would fight back. Hours later, as the sun dipped below the skyline of Aurelia City, I caught a glimpse of Ryan's latest post. He was furious. Angry. clawing desperately to regain control, but it was too late. I had taken the first step, and the city had noticed. Adrian watched me from across the room, expression unreadable. "Tomorrow," he said, "we escalate. But for tonight, enjoy this small victory. It won't come often." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of adrenaline and exhaustion. For the first time in days, I felt a little powerful. Not invincible, far from it, but capable. And as Adrian left the room, I realized something that made my heart beat faster. He wasn't just my guide in this world. He was part of the battlefield now, too. And I didn't know if that was terrifying or exciting. One thing was certain, Ryan's reign of petty revenge had met its first real opponent. And I wasn't planning to stop. The next morning, the city felt different. I could feel it, every glance, every message, every whisper seemed to carry weight I hadn't noticed before. The first strike against Ryan had been successful, but it was only a beginning. And I could sense that the real challenge wasn't him, it was my family. Adrian didn't waste time. "Your father's empire is complicated," he said, as we walked briskly down a quiet side street. "Allies and enemies alike wear masks. People you trust may not be trustworthy. And people you dismiss as irrelevant can be the most dangerous." I shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. "Family," I muttered under my breath. "You mean, my own family?" He gave me a sharp glance. "Exactly. Your father's circle, your uncles, distant cousins, even some executives have agendas. They know your absence makes you vulnerable. And some of them have been waiting decades for a chance to control Carrington Global. Now, they see it." My stomach twisted. I had always imagined my father's world as untouchable. But now I realized that the empire was like a chessboard, and I was suddenly a piece in play, maybe the queen, maybe the pawn. By midday, we arrived at one of the Carrington estate's lesser-known properties, a sprawling but discreet office that rarely appeared in public records. The moment I stepped inside, I sensed tension, quiet but sharp. Papers, files, and portraits of Carrington ancestors lined the walls, but it was the atmosphere that felt alive, like the building itself was watching. "Ella," Adrian said, lowering his voice. "There are people here who will test you today. Watch and listen. Every smile, every hesitation, every word is a piece of a puzzle." The first person to enter was my uncle, Martin Carrington. His smile was smooth, almost fatherly, but his eyes were calculating. "Ella," he said warmly, "I hear the city is abuzz about your revelation." I nodded, smiling politely but cautiously. "Yes. It's been eventful." He chuckled lightly, but I noticed the subtle twitch of his jaw. "Eventful indeed. And you've handled it admirably. But tell me, how do you plan to protect yourself from people like Ryan? Or worse?" The worse hung in the air like a threat. I glanced at Adrian, who simply nodded once, encouraging me to speak. "I plan to learn," I said carefully. "Every rule, every danger, every truth. I won't be a victim anymore." Martin's smile widened, but his eyes remained sharp. "Very well. But remember, Ella, knowledge isn't always protection. Sometimes, it can be a trap." Next came a distant cousin I barely knew, Clara. Her expression was cold, almost dismissive. "So the little artist finally shows her face," she said. "Do you really think you can step into our world without being crushed?" I clenched my fists beneath the table but forced a polite laugh. "I don't intend to be crushed. I intend to stand." Adrian's presence beside me was grounding, but I could see the tension in his jaw. He knew the stakes as well as I did. Every move, every word, could be twisted against me. By the end of the day, I felt both drained and exhilarated. I had survived their tests, or at least, I thought I had. But the feeling that I was being watched, studied, and measured didn't leave me. Not even for a second. As Adrian and I left the estate, he finally spoke in a tone that was almost personal. "Ella, you're stronger than you realize. But strength alone won't protect you. You'll need cunning. And you'll need to decide who, if anyone, truly stands with you." I nodded, swallowing hard. My family. I had always loved them, but now, I realized love and loyalty weren't the same. And in this world, The line between ally and enemy was razor-thin. That night, as I sat by the window of the safe house, watching Aurelia City glitter like a sea of stars, I realized something chilling. My first strike had been against Ryan, a small but loud opponent. But the real battlefield was right here, in my own family. And the war had only just begun. The next few days felt like walking through a storm with invisible knives. Every call, every email, every casual meeting felt loaded with hidden threats. Ryan had quieted down, probably realizing that the tide had turned, but my family was a battlefield I hadn't been prepared for. Adrian didn't leave my side. He moved like a shadow, always a few steps ahead, reading the currents of power, predicting the moves I hadn't even realized were being made. And yet, he didn't tell me everything. I knew he had secrets. Always had secrets. And that made me uneasy, frustratingly so. That evening, Adrian and I were in the safe house, reviewing files he had acquired on my extended family. Uncle Martin, distant cousins, business associates, all of them had layers I couldn't see before. Patterns. Alliances. Betrayals waiting to happen. Ella, Adrian said quietly, not everyone is who they seem. Some of the people you trust, or think you trust, have already chosen sides. I froze. Already chosen sides? He nodded. Yes. And some of them see you as the obstacle between them and your father's empire. You have to be careful who you confide in. Even a smile could be a weapon. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. My own family, my own blood, could be plotting against me. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think you're clever. But clever girls get hurt. I felt my heart skip a beat. The message was simple, but the threat was unmistakable. Someone was watching me, someone close enough to know my movements, my routine, and my vulnerabilities. Adrian, I said, turning to him, but he was already scanning the room, eyes sharp as a blade. We've been expecting this, he said. But it's not Ryan. He's small. This is someone much smarter. My stomach sank. Someone smarter. Someone who knew the game better than I did. Someone with patience and precision and an agenda I couldn't yet see. I felt a flicker of anger, then fear, then determination. I wouldn't be a pawn. I wouldn't be anyone's target. Not anymore. Adrian stepped closer. Ella, you need to understand something. Strength alone won't save you. You need strategy. You need to read people. And you need to decide, who do you trust? I met his gaze, and for a fleeting moment, something unspoken passed between us. He was more than a guide, more than a protector. He was something I couldn't define, but it made my heart beat faster and my thoughts scatter. I looked back at my phone. Another message followed. Trust no one. Not even him. I froze. Not even him? The words struck harder than I expected. Was it a warning or a threat? Was it a trap? Adrian noticed my hesitation. You see why I said strategy matters, he asked quietly, his voice calm but firm. And yes, sometimes, the enemy is closer than you think. I nodded slowly, my mind racing. This wasn't just about Ryan anymore. This wasn't about public image or petty revenge. This was a war. A war of secrets, power, and survival. And if I wanted to win, I couldn't afford mistakes. Not with my family, not with my enemies, and, maybe not with Adrian. Because even as I felt his presence beside me, guiding me, protecting me, I couldn't shake the sense that there was more he wasn't telling me. Something he was keeping hidden, something that could change everything. And I realized, with a chill creeping up my spine, that the masked enemy wasn't just out there. Sometimes, the masked enemy was sitting right next to you. The morning air felt heavier than usual, like the city itself was holding its breath. I sat at the safe house window, watching Aurelia City wake up, glittering yet dangerous, and I couldn't shake the feeling that every shadow held eyes, watching, waiting. Adrian entered without knocking, his expression unreadable. He carried a folder in one hand, his usual calm precision intact, but the tension around him was palpable. Ella, he said quietly, placing the folder on the desk. We have a problem. I opened it, scanning the contents, confidential memos, financial records, and photos. My stomach dropped as I realized what I was looking at. This is my family, I whispered. They're planning something? Adrian nodded. Yes. Your Uncle Martin has been secretly aligning with several board members. They're planning to challenge your father's authority, and they see you as a potential obstacle. I clenched my fists, trying to hold back a surge of anger. So everything I've done, all this effort, they could just undo it. Exactly, Adrian said, his voice steady but firm. And there's more. Ryan, he's resurfacing, but he's no longer acting alone. Someone is guiding him, feeding him information about you. Someone with power, influence, and patience. I felt my chest tighten. Ryan was small time, but now, he was a pawn in a much larger game. And the thought of being manipulated, of being used again, made my skin crawl. I stood abruptly. We can't let them win. Adrian's eyes softened slightly, but his tone was serious. No, we can't. But we have to be careful. One wrong move, and they'll see us coming from miles away. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. Strategy, not emotion. I reminded myself of the first strike I had made against Ryan. It had worked because I had acted deliberately. Now, I had to do the same, but on a much larger scale. Then what's the plan? I asked. Adrian stepped closer, lowering his voice. We hit them before they hit us. We expose their alliances, reveal their motives, and take control of the narrative. And Ella, he hesitated, his eyes locking onto mine. We do it together. But you need to trust me completely. I hesitated. His presence was grounding, but there was that lingering doubt. The masked enemy, could it be him? Could I trust him? My instinct screamed caution, but my desire to fight back screamed louder. I trust you, I said, finally. But the words felt heavy on my tongue, like a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. Adrian nodded once, sharply. Good. Then the first step is to draw them out. Let them make the first visible move. We'll watch, record, and prepare our counterstrike. And Ryan, his lips tightened. He's going to regret underestimating you. I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This wasn't just about Ryan anymore, it was about power, survival, and reclaiming control over my life. And even as my mind raced, a strange awareness settled in. I wasn't just fighting my enemies anymore. I was learning to fight with Adrian. The hours passed in tense silence, punctuated only by the soft hum of computers and the occasional alert from our surveillance. And then it happened. A video appeared online. Ryan, looking smug and confident, posted another attack. But this time, it was different. Someone had helped him, someone who knew exactly how to manipulate the public narrative. And they had no idea that we were ready for them. I leaned back, heart pounding. They think they're in control, I whispered. Adrian's lips curved in the faintest smirk. They just walked into our trap. And for the first time in days, I felt a surge of power, not just as an heiress, but as someone who could fight back, someone who could take control of her story. But even as the thrill surged through me, I knew the edge of betrayal was still close, razor sharp. One mistake, one misstep, and everything could fall apart. And I couldn't afford to fall, not now, not ever. The night felt impossibly still, the city below glittering like shards of glass. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of the safe house, my fingers pressed against the cool glass as I tried to calm my racing heart. Tonight, everything would change. Tonight, the storm I had been preparing for would finally strike. Adrian appeared silently behind me, his presence steady and commanding. He handed me a folder, thick with documents and photos. Everything you need to expose them, he said softly. Your family, Ryan, their alliances. Everyone who underestimated you. I opened it slowly, my breath catching. Uncle Martin. Clara. The hidden board members. Evidence of secret deals, alliances, and betrayals spanning years. The full scope of my family's plotting was laid bare before me. And at the center of it all, Ryan, manipulated and used as their pawn. They think they can control everything, I whispered. They think I'm weak. Adrian's eyes met mine. They misjudged you. And tonight, you make them pay. The plan was simple, in theory, a public revelation that would leave no doubt about who was in control. Adrian had arranged a private press conference, carefully timed, carefully crafted, where I would expose the corruption, the manipulation, and the betrayal. Ryan's lies, my family's schemes, all of it would be revealed at once. I took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline surge through me. I had trained myself for this moment, sharpened my instincts, and for the first time, I felt the weight of my power. As we arrived at the conference hall, the tension was palpable. Reporters, cameras, and city officials filled the room, all buzzing with curiosity. Ryan was there, smirking, clearly thinking he was about to humiliate me again. He had no idea what waited for him. I stepped onto the stage, heart pounding, and let the room fall silent. Adrian stood behind me, his presence like a shield. I opened my laptop, projected the evidence onto the big screen, and began to speak. "My name is Ella Carrington," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "And for years, people have tried to manipulate my life, my image, and my family's legacy for their own gain. Today, that ends." The screen lit up with proof, secret emails, financial documents, manipulated posts by Ryan, and even footage of clandestine meetings. Every person in the room could see the truth. Ryan's confident smirk faltered, then disappeared entirely. He stumbled over his words, trying to explain, to deny, but it was too late. The tide had turned. And then, the final bombshell, the revelation of who had been orchestrating his actions. The masked enemy, the one feeding him information, was none other than my distant cousin, Clara. The shock on her face was priceless, the years of manipulation, finally exposed. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Phones buzzed. My family, the very people who had plotted against me, were caught in their own web. And Adrian, he didn't let go of my side, his eyes meeting mine with a hint of pride. But even as the cheers and gasps filled the hall, I felt a deeper truth settling over me. This victory, as sweet as it was, came with a cost. Betrayal ran deeper than I had ever imagined, and power came with shadows that would never fully disappear. After the press conference, as the city buzzed with news of the exposé, I turned to Adrian. "We did it," I whispered. He shook his head slightly, eyes serious. "Yes, but this is only the beginning. Power has a price, Ella. And now, people will be watching you more than ever." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. And as I looked out over Aurelia City, I realized he was right. The heiress next door had claimed her place, but the battlefield was far from over. Ryan would recover, my family would regroup, and new enemies would emerge. But one thing was certain, I would never be a pawn again. And as Adrian's hand brushed against mine, a spark I couldn't ignore flickered between us, I understood something else. This war, this game, it wasn't just about survival. It was about taking control of my destiny, and maybe, just maybe, learning who I could truly trust. For now, the city was ours. But tomorrow, the real reckoning would begin. Epilogue. The city had quieted, but I knew better than to believe it was safe. Aurelia City never slept, and neither did the enemies who lurked in its shadows. Tonight, the headlines hailed me as the heiress who fought back. Tomorrow, no one could say. Adrian and I stood on the rooftop of the safe house, the wind tugging at my hair, the skyline glittering like a battlefield I had just begun to understand. He didn't speak at first, just let me breathe in the cool night air. "You did well today," he said finally, his voice low, almost private. "They won't see the next move coming." I smiled faintly, but there was an edge to my smile, a shadow of doubt. "And what about us?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. He turned to me then, his expression unreadable. "Us." "Yes," I whispered, my heart thudding in my chest. "You. Me. This, whatever this is between us. I need to know if I can trust you with everything, my life, my secrets, myself." Adrian's gaze softened for the briefest moment, just enough to make my chest tighten. "Ella," he said carefully, "trust isn't given lightly in this world. And you've just started learning how dangerous it is to trust. But know this, I'm not going anywhere. Not as long as this war lasts." A shiver ran through me, equal parts fear and something else, something I wasn't ready to name. His presence was a shield, yes, but also a challenge, a temptation, and a warning. I looked out over the city and felt the weight of every secret, every betrayal, every move I had yet to make. My family was fractured, Ryan was humiliated but still dangerous, and Clara had only just begun to realize she had underestimated me. The calm of the night felt fragile, like a thin veil stretched over the chaos that was about to return. And I knew, deep down, that once the sun rose tomorrow, nothing would ever be the same. I turned to Adrian. "Are you ready?" I asked. He gave me that unreadable look again, one that made my pulse quicken. "Always," he said. And as we stood side by side, overlooking Aurelia City, a city of power, lies, and danger, I realized something terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. The heiress next door wasn't just surviving anymore. She was about to fight. And this time, she wasn't alone. The city below twinkled innocently, but I knew better. The next battle was coming. And Adrian and I would face it together, whether the world, or our own hearts, were ready for it or not. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.